Jamie here. Good morning. June 13th, 2024, 8:45 here. Talk quick about the markets, some of the names I traded yesterday, some of the names I'm looking at, and go from there. Take a look at the S&P or the SPY. Futures are into the green again, trying to make it 4 consecutive days to the upside after the strong CPI, well, not the strong, the cooler than expected CPI data yesterday, coupled with the Fed, who really didn't do much, pretty much reiterated their stance, although Powell I wouldn't say for the first time, but made it sound like they're in a position of control where they finally can do something, which would probably imply that they're going to cut rates. If you look at the implied or the probability or the expectation of rate cuts, they really haven't gone up too much. But if you go to the December meeting, there's a 60%, the market's pricing a 6% probability of 2 rate cuts. So we'll see if that all plays out. This morning, PPI data came out. Again, cooler than expected slightly. I kind of like the PPI data because it's like a forward-looking number, right? Because the producer inflation, that's before it gets to the consumer. So if that's higher, then you would think at some point it's going to roll over to the CPI. But needless to say, markets are looking pretty good here this morning, and that's despite Europe selling off this morning. So uh, I've been saying it about the new highs, but get new highs since the low 530s and below. 545, I thought was a good target. Probably some chop here today and tomorrow. There's no big catalysts outside of, the PPI today. We have earnings after the close today, but nothing much in the way of just Adobe. Uh, Restoration Hardware, I think, reports. So probably it's more of a technical move today. We'll get some chop between ranges, probably 544, 543.50 or so. And then if things get dicey, that 541 handle. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Another good sign here, and I keep talking about the small caps. At some point, I want to see the small caps break out. Yesterday, they were up 1.54%, outperforming all the other indexes. I think the NASDAQ was up 1.53%. So just fractionally above the Nasdaq, but a good sign, and it pretty much erased the last 7 sessions. They weren't all declines, but it you know I guess if you put it next to the candles, it would be an engulfing candle, right? So it took away all those losses, and then you start looking and that 206 area on the IWM. If that breaks, then maybe that's the start of a new leg to the upside. So definitely watching that. And concerning a lot of the names that I trade are small caps, I think it would bode well if those will finally break out. And even if the market just chops around while small caps outperform, I think that'll bode well. So some of the individual names, and Apple, of course, kicking myself a little bit. I haven't traded Apple in years. I again talked about. I thought maybe folks were looking at the WWDC even after it sold off after the event. That they thought, hey, AI is probably could be the next leg for Apple. A new refresh cycle for phones, considering that the integrations or some of the things they're going to put in are you need to have a iPhone 15, iPhone Plus, you need to have an M1 chip or above. So is that going to force people to change, to upgrade? I don't, who knows, but the market's usually the first to tell you. So in hindsight, of course, I wish I held all my 202.50s into yesterday and then sold them at the highs, but that's not how it works. I'm happy to get 500 or 1,000% gain, right? And I always use that analogy. That Seinfeld episode's always in my head when I have a big gain. Anybody can just buy a contract, a 202.50 call on Apple. The hard part is the hold. And where is it going? And that's why it's important to have targets, support, resistance, because then it gives you a little more of a guideline of, hey, this is where I'm going to exit. I thought 210, right? So, and I think I mentioned it Tuesday Tuesday afternoon that I thought maybe 215, but even that I thought was a stretch. But I closed my 202.50s only because I had 212.50s, and I said, wow, these are paying too. So I closed those two for some nice profits, and sure enough, it goes bonkers. We'll see what happens today. I mean, it's chopping around. It's still somewhat in the green. A name I'll revisit, but probably I'll just stay away from Apple. It's not my forte, I guess I would call it. That's Apple. Universal Displays. That's a name I used to trade back in the day. I love the story considering screens are an extremely important part of everybody's life. Back, it used to be televisions. Now it's screen, iPads, phones, virtual reality glasses. All those things it's not going away. And there's got to be manufacturers and partners that supply this. And Universal Display is one of those. Huge partner with Samsung. Just a great story, and you can see it running up. It's been running up since pretty much the start of June, and then accelerated yesterday and the day before. And I think a lot of that again has to do with the possibility that there's going to be a refresh cycle in phones, and the phones could be Samsungs as well, right? So like this name, I added some 210 strikes. Thanks, Sit Up in the chat room for bringing it to my attention. It's not on, wasn't on my main watch list. It broke over 200 bucks. Locked some of my 210s in for a couple 100%. I added some 220s. I may look for some July strikes. We'll have to see how it goes, how it plays out today. If it starts breaking over 205 again in the morning, I may look just to close the last of my 210s, look out further dated strikes and go from there. The all-time high on Universal Display OLED, OLED is the ticker, by the way, is I think it's 255, and that's back in 2020, 2021, somewhere in there. So I'm not saying it gets there in the next couple days, but I could see kind of this catch-up trade and trading much higher. So like Universal Display. Adobe reports after the close today. Disappointing, right? Because it was all the way up at 471 after the market opened, and that just gave back all those gains to close in the red. Would have liked to have an opportunity to close some of the calls in to cover costs for 100%. I think they were up 60 or 70% at times at the highs yesterday. Hopefully, I get another chance here today. If it turns around, I'll wait till the afternoon, and I'll probably just salvage the position, close the position, depending on where it's at, and revisit. If I'm able to get some out to cover costs, I'll do that too and hold some into earnings, because I think if Adobe just posts an inline report and a little bit of a rosy outlook, I think it's 515, and if it's a really strong quarter and a nice raise, it could be 530. So that's what I'll be looking for on Adobe. URI just as disappointing as Adobe, actually more disappointing. The stock was soaring yesterday after the open. There was no news. All the industrial names were rallying. GWW, even my STRL, and I'm like, what news? No upgrade, no, not. It was up 6%. Goes all the way up to its 50-day moving average around 468, 469. Excuse me, 669, and then it gave it all back. So I mean, yeah, to say disappointing would be an understatement. Closed 625, hit 623, which is pretty much the lows from the day before. Uh, Still have some time on the strikes. I'm going to hold them. Hopefully it finds some footing here and retest that 50, because I think once that 50-day moving average breaks, it'll be off to the races. So I'll probably hold for that. Not much to update here on Turn. Turn still in a nice uptrend, closed up barely in the green yesterday. I think once that's over $8, that's off to the races. Align, so ALGN. I was watching that all day, and I'm looking at the calls, and it almost looked like this is a time where the stock buyback is going to start to really take hold, and it's just going to melt to the upside. 2% days, 3% days, 4% days to the upside. Sure enough, was it due yesterday? Closed up 12, almost $13, 5%. I still have the 290s. If it shows some strength in the morning, I might look for some speculative calls, maybe 275s, 280s. I was looking yesterday; they seem kind of expensive on a risk reward basis with 2 days to expiration. So today might be a better day to look to add those. HPQ closed in the green, was at actually it closed slightly in the red on Monday, but slightly higher yesterday, nearly up 1%. Again, it's went from after its earnings, the huge move. It's the volatility comes out. Now it's just going to be a slow, methodical, snail-like move up to $40, or at least that's what I think it's going to do. So I'll continue to hold the calls there. I'm trying to think of some of these other names. Roblox got an upgrade this morning, so that could be one I'm looking at. Oh, and Arista Networks. I don't know if this is on the heels. So Broadcom reported earnings after the close yesterday. Nice beat, strong quarter beat and raise. They announced a 10-for-1 split. The stock is soaring this morning. Premiums were nuts to begin with, but if you had gotten calls, I guess, earlier in the week when it was trading under $1,400, those were probably a heck of a lot less expensive. But then you see some sympathy names starting to move, and Arista Networks was 335 and change a couple of weeks ago. I think that could be a nice speculative lotto today. So it is gapping. I mean, closed at 311. It's at 321 here in the pre-market. So I'll be watching that one. I think that's about it, folks. I'm trying to think of anything else to rant about. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.